This is a fictional crime story created for storytelling and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental. Number 3. Evan Cross. In the early 1990s, a 15-year-old boy named Lucas Reed lived with his family in Ashwood Township, a quiet suburban community in the northeastern United States. Lucas was a 9th grade student, known by friends as a restless teenager who sometimes clashed with authority. On the evening of early May, Lucas failed to return home. In the past, Lucas had run away from home a few times. Each time, however, he always contacted a friend or relative within a few days. This time was different. Days passed, then weeks. No calls, no letters, no sightings. Eventually, Lucas was officially reported missing. Nearly a year and a half later, during the winter season, a local hunter stumbled upon skeletal remains deep in a wooded area not far from town. Dental records were used to identify the remains as Lucas Reed. At the time, the medical examiner could not determine the exact cause of death. There were no obvious signs of trauma left on the bones. With no physical evidence and no suspects, the investigation stalled almost immediately. The case went cold. For more than 2 decades, Lucas Reed's disappearance remained one of Ashwood Township's most haunting mysteries. Then, one early morning, more than 20 years later, at approximately 5 a.m., a 41-year-old man named Evan Cross walked into the Ashwood Township Police Department. Cross lived alone in a nearby coastal city and worked as a financial consultant. He had a criminal history. When he was younger, he had served several years in prison for drug-related offenses. Cross told officers that he was there to confess. He admitted that he had murdered Lucas Reed all those years ago. According to Cross, on the night before Lucas was officially reported missing, he stabbed the teenager multiple times during a violent confrontation. He refused to explain the nature of his relationship with Lucas and offered no clear motive. Cross stated that he had been emotionally unstable at the time and claimed that substance abuse may have contributed to his loss of control. At his first court appearance, before formal charges were even filed, Cross attempted to plead guilty. The judge refused, explaining that the process had to follow legal procedure. The following day, Cross was formally charged with murder. Shortly afterward, Cross spoke briefly with a local news reporter. He said that the guilt had haunted him for more than 20 years. "I couldn't live with it anymore," he said. "I wanted to give the family some closure." Cross admitted that he believed the crime would never have been solved if he had not come forward. "I wasn't afraid of getting caught," he said, "but I was never free in my mind." One of Cross's closest friends later confirmed that Cross had been tormented by nightmares in the weeks leading up to his confession. In those dreams, he claimed to see Lucas's mother asking him how he could destroy their family. Several months later, Evan Cross pleaded guilty to aggravated manslaughter. He was sentenced to decades in prison with a mandatory minimum term before parole eligibility. Case number 2. Mark Halloway. In the mid-1970s, the small river town of Ridgeport, located along the Mississippi River, had a population of just over 4,000 residents. The town's mayor, Arthur Collins, had served in local government for many years. He lived with his wife Elaine, and their children were grown and living elsewhere. One winter afternoon, just days before Christmas, one of their sons stopped by the family home to drop off gifts. The front door was slightly open. Inside the hallway, he discovered his father's body. His mother was found deceased in the bedroom. Arthur had been shot multiple times. Elaine had been shot once in the head. The crime scene confused investigators. There were no signs of forced entry, no theft, and no indication of a struggle. Both victims were wearing night clothes. It appeared they had opened the door willingly. Police theorized that the killer was either known to Arthur or someone he did not perceive as a threat. Despite multiple theories, including political motives, investigators found no physical evidence. The murder weapon was never recovered. The case went cold. Nearly 20 years later, detectives reopened the investigation and publicly announced that the case could only be solved if someone came forward. Months later, a former neighbor named Mark Halloway turned himself in. Halloway had recently become deeply religious and confessed the murders to his church minister, who contacted an attorney and arranged for Halloway's surrender. Holloway admitted that on the night of the murders, he went to the Collins home under the pretense of needing help. Once inside, he opened fire. When asked why, Holloway gave a chilling response. "I just wanted to know what it felt like." At the time of the murders, Holloway had been only 14 years old. Due to his age, prosecutors offered a plea deal. Holloway accepted and was sentenced to a reduced prison term. Case number 1. Jonathan Marrow. In the summer of recent years, a man named Jonathan Marrow, already imprisoned for an unrelated murder, walked into a federal field office and asked to speak with investigators. He said he wanted to confess to additional killings. Marrow described a murder he committed decades earlier, involving a young woman he met late one night. He claimed the attack occurred inside an unfinished apartment building. At the time, a young woman with matching characteristics had been found murdered under similar circumstances. Another man had once been accused, but later acquitted due to lack of evidence. Years later, advanced DNA testing revealed the truth. Marrow's confession matched the forensic evidence. More than 4 decades after the crime, Jonathan Marrow was formally charged. He remains in custody, awaiting trial. Decades can pass. Evidence can fade. Suspects can disappear. But sometimes the truth survives, waiting for guilt to finally speak.